Hi, and welcome to Spoonful of Strength. I'm Rachel, and I live with multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, and a few other diagnoses that keep life interesting.
And I'm Tina. I am a fibromyalgia warrior with chronic back issues and a proud stage 4 cancer survivor. We're sisters, and together we're here to support, inspire, and connect. So if you're new here, the spoon theory explains how we navigate life with limited energy or spoons.
And we're thrilled to share that we've been ranked number 30 on FeedSpot's Top 100 Chronic Illness podcast list. So grab a spoon and let's dig into stories, tips, and a whole lot of strength. Welcome back to a new season of Spoonful of Strength. We have taken a little bit of a break, well deserved for us, and we're coming back with another season of great topics, great spoonies, and looking forward to getting this season started off right.
Every season, I feel like we have learned something new, and each time we switch things up and tweak things a little bit. So going into season 4, our first half this time, we are going to try something different where each of our portion of the episode will be revolving around a specific question.
Yeah. And, we thought we always sit down and talk about what do we want to do different. And there's not a lot that we want to do different this season. I think we're getting more comfortable as each season comes along. But I did like that we decided to do that because then, our listeners know exactly what we're talking about. And we're going to be asking for your feedback as well on the question and want to see what your thoughts on our question of the week. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about toxic positivity and whether or not that exists in the chronic illness community. We're also bringing in Melissa to join us. Melissa is a registered nurse specializing in autoimmune rare disorders, and she's going to come on and talk to us about her Hashimoto's as well as a new mission to help women avoid midlife issues. So we're going to be happy to bring her on in just a little bit.
During our break, Rachel, did you find that your time off, was it refreshing for you or was it regressing? Or was it a little bit of both?
I think it was a little bit of both, actually. We took a family vacation, which we haven't done in I don't know, 7 years, and took the family to Tennessee, and we had a nice week off, and that was really nice, but it was also very humbling. And I noticed with my disability and my mobility, things were not as easy as I'd hoped for vacation. And maybe we'll talk about this on a future episode or something, but it was very hard physically for me, but mentally it was really hard. And just realizing the things I couldn't do and all the setbacks and everything. So, but it definitely was refreshing of just taking time away and thinking about how we want to make it better. And we definitely have to do that. I know we made some changes to our future episodes and future seasons just to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and being able to refresh as we need to every season. So what about you?
I would say a little bit of both as well. I did a lot of travel, which was refreshing, but also exhausting
Yeah.
during that. But it was good. I'm glad that I got that in. And as you know, last week we were hit with something, some rough. We lost my little almost 15-year-old doodle girl Ivy. So that was hard, but I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do as much. One last big trip, we went from Maryland all the way out to Minnesota and back for a flyball tournament. And so I'm glad that we had one last big adventure before that happened. But I think spending time with friends and family on that break with all the travel actually did me really good, but it's caught up with me. I'm exhausted. Yeah. I am exhausted.
Yeah.
I did find out also that my iron is low again, so I'm waiting for the insurance to approve iron infusions. So that should also help with
Yeah, that should help a lot.
lot of
Yeah.
the energy struggles that I've been dealing with. So
We definitely, I'm sure the whole chronic illness community wants to send condolences because Ivy was a pretty awesome little doodle. So,
today it's an important topic because I feel like a lot of us tend to try to think positive, think positive, think positive, think happy thoughts as we're going through this. So we are going to talk about toxic positivity and how it's not necessarily always a good thing just to only exude the positive.
mm-hmm. And I kind of researched this a little bit because when we talked about answering this question, I was like, do I know exactly what toxic positivity is? Because my first thoughts was, okay, well, trying to be positive, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is our Instagram too positive? Is it this or is it that? But really, in kind of looking into it, I realized that it's actually the belief um, that you have to maintain a positive attitude no matter how dire your situation is, of experiencing toxic positivity from people who just expect you to act as if everything's wonderful in the world when maybe it's not. And so in kind of looking into that, I was like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. But I think that toxic positivity can be detrimental when you're going through challenges with chronic illness. Have you ever experienced like anybody just kind of forcing you to try and be positive, especially through your cancer journey?
Um, Actually, not too much during the cancer journey. I know when I struggled with fibromyalgia and with flare-ups, oh, you just need more sleep. Oh, it's not that bad. Think, just, don't think about it. Think happy thoughts or, look at the positive or, go out and do things that make you happy, versus acknowledging what I'm going through and how I'm
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
And
I,
I think that that actually happens a lot with those that struggle with mental health.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, because it affects your mental health. Everybody's telling you, you may have gotten a diagnosis that's like, earth shattering for you. And the people are saying, well, it'll all be fine and all this. It just makes you feel like, am I overreacting to this? Like, I actually had a family member when I was diagnosed with MS say, well, at least it's not cancer. And I was like, w- and at the time I was so shocked by it that I was like, yeah, yeah, kind of thinking, and I let it sit and I was like, what in the world? Like, where does that even come from? Because I don't want to downplay cancer at all. I know your story. Um, but nowadays there's cancer that you can recover from. And I'm
Absolutely.
like,
And that,
MS is a long, drawn out chronic illness that will most likely never get better, and I will live with and for the next however many years I'm alive. I mean, um, it's
yeah, that
just
was a
heartbreaking.
crazy, yeah, that was a
Yeah.
crazy, because I know when I was diagnosed and I went through it, going through it, I really actually struggled and I actually felt I had a lot of guilt, um, because I was diagnosed about the time your MS symptoms started getting worse. I think we
Mm,
were kind of going through the same thing. And I really struggled with the fact that this was something that I could beat
mm,
and that you were not, you had something that is just going to be progressive, not regressive. So,
yeah.
I just can't imagine somebody making that comment when there's no comparison. Well, not only is there no comparison to that, but there should be no whataboutism when it comes to chronic illness
Hmm.
anyway. Your
Yeah.
your journey is your journey, and so
Yeah. It really is. And I, even with like diagnosis I got for the centronuclear myopathy, um, telling that to some of the same people, um, I got met with, "Oh, okay, well, just let me know how it's going." Like that was it. That was it. And I was like, and move on to the next subject. And so that particular is not necessarily, but um toxic positivity. It's more of just overlooking the fact. But I have heard well, you just need to sleep more and you just need to look on the bright side and I do know that having a positive attitude in life is good. But when you have painful experiences or painful emotions, um, you need to face those and you need to have people sit with you in it. I think I may have even mentioned this before, but when Ed and I were in therapy, um, he and I would have just a horrible day and I didn't feel well and I would just be crying uncontrollably. And he's just like, you know, he tends not to say anything, which, is better than saying it's okay, it's okay. But we talked about that and my therapist said, you need to like she's in a hole. You need to climb down in that hole and just be with her. And sometimes if you're having a rough day and all you want is to be comforted, you just want somebody to acknowledge that what you're feeling is okay and not, well, it'll be better tomorrow or the things that can come out. And um yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It reminds that makes me think of that, there's times and not necessarily relating to my health, but just in general when I was working full time in a stressful situation where I'd come home and just need to vent.
Yeah.
And um there are times that I would be like, but Dave is a fixer. And so
Hmm.
he finally, we finally I I would get just as frustrated trying to get out what I needed to get out because he would try to give me advice and I'm like, I don't need advice. I just needed to get it out, I just needed to
Yeah.
vent. And so he got to the point now that when I'm in those moments that he'll be like, are you just venting or do you want my advice? Because
Hmm.
sometimes unsolicited advice also um does not add to your positivity when that's not what you're wanting.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever feel like, because as I was mulling over this question over the last several days, um, do you feel like the toxic positivity can be internal, like for yourself? Because there's
I do.
sometimes I feel like I can be just as toxic of that. Oh, if I've had a horrible day and I'm tired of just being like, oh, it's just, you're making a bigger deal of it. You just got to suck it up. It's um, tomorrow will be better, and sometimes I put that on myself.
And you're doing yourself a disservice doing that and not it's almost like it's like a a bit of a defense mechanism.
Mm,
If you're thinking positive thoughts, then you're not thinking of everything else that's going on. So you're kind of putting a barrier around your own feelings and emotions, which is not a healthy thing either to constantly do. Sometimes you have to maybe compartmentalize and go, you know what, this is too much for me to deal with right now. So I'm just going
hmm.
to think positive thoughts and ignore them. But to continually do that and not address, those deep feelings
Yeah,
and
but
let them be overshadowed.
I think that a lot of times I do that because it's too hard to sit in it.
Mhm.
So, just like with my diagnosis, I don't think it's sunk in yet. I just
Right.
keep
Yeah.
almost ignoring it and yeah, yeah, it's not set in yet.
But it also can, one thing that I had noticed, and if you remember during my early on in my diagnosis, my posts were all, this is what I'm going through, but I know I'm going to beat it. Like every post was positive, 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 and I was not
Mm-hmm.
sharing my struggles. And then I had a few friends that were diagnosed like stage one cancer that they had surgery and that was all they did, and they would be like, oh, I'm so scared, this is a lot to go through, but I feel like I shouldn't be going through it because here's so and so going through something way worse but has such a different attitude, such a positive attitude, that then that toxic positivity, I realized I was not helping others with their
Mm-hmm.
journey. I was actually making them feel they were wrong or incorrect or overly dramatic or overly worried because I was portraying myself as being so positive and not struggle. So that's when I started
Mm-hmm.
actually sharing the good and the bad.
Mm. That's hard to do. I even with the Instagram page, uh, I struggle with sharing any bad of myself. And again, this goes back to probably me having some toxic positivity on my end of just not wanting people to feel sorry for me and not um, trying to keep the community as positive as possible. But what you won't see on our Instagram page is, everything's going to be fine. It so it's kind of that balance of sharing the positive and the negative, both ends. Do you think that toxic positivity could also be under the umbrella of gaslighting?
I think so, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, when you have people constantly saying, "Oh, don't think about it," or "It's everything's going to be fine," or "It's not that bad." That's gaslighting for sure. They're trying to convince you that your feelings aren't your feelings, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was thinking about it and I was like, yes and no, because I think you have to look at the source that it's coming from. Um, because there may be genuine people that don't know what to do, or don't know what to say, and are saying these things to you just for lack of knowledge of what to help you, how to help you. Um, but I think it definitely can be. But I also think that there are people that just don't know what to say,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And so they go for the positive. They want to be encouraging,
Yeah.
and that's important. Being around somebody that there's a point where I feel if somebody, how do I want to word this? Someone in your life always positive, you're going to reach a point that potentially where you feel like they're not really listening, they're not hearing
Mm-hmm.
you, they're
Mm-hmm.
not seeing you, they're spouting the words, think positive, it's not so bad, things will get better, blah blah blah. And it becomes almost like a canned response for them with anything that you're going on, and then you start feeling unseen
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
unheard.
Yeah. I've heard before, aren't you glad you don't have to work? And I was like, I would pay money to be able to go back to the job that I loved and work and earn money and feel like I'm financially helping the family more and feeling like I had a purpose and was doing good in the community and having that feeling versus living with, what am I at now? 4 or 5 chronic illnesses that require a 24-hour, it's like working a 24-hour a day, 7 day a week job of managing multiple things in the air and never getting a break. Like, I don't understand how people can think that if your chronic illness gets to that point where you can't work, of how that's a vacation. And even
Right.
something like that is, oh, well, just be happy that you can stay at home. And it's, you had said it, it's just, yeah, it diminishes
Yeah.
everything. Are you living with pain? We get it. And we're done pretending it's just a part of life.
That's why we use the universal heat patch from Spicy. Natural, clean heat, no meds, no mess.
It sticks on discreetly, moves with you, and gives you up to 12 hours of relief. No cords, no chemicals, just actual comfort.
Created by people who live with pain for people who live with pain. Finally.
Grab yours at getspicy.com. That's GETSPICEY.com. And follow Get Spicy for real talk and real tools.
Spicy, because you deserve relief that works.
So, we can't talk about all of this without offering maybe some advice or some things that have helped us through the hard time. So can you think about either when you were going through your cancer or your back issues or anything like that, of things that either people said that made a difference for you?
Um, I think the biggest one for me is just anyone who would say, I understand what you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I have a close family member, and every time I come to her with either a bad test result or a diagnosis, all she says is just, I am so sorry. And she gets emotional. And she's one of the only people in my life that, like, it affects her just as much. And we can sit there and just be in our feelings.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she doesn't say a lot of times she doesn't say anything right off the bat. She just almost lets it sink into her and just, I am so sorry. And that means more than somebody saying, oh, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah,
You
because
know.
it's not,
Yeah.
and I think that some people they just don't know what to say. So
Yeah.
they feel that, that those words are a way of encouraging and making you feel better, and in reality, it can contribute to making you feel worse.
Yeah.
Because deep down you're like, no, it's not,
Yeah. Yeah. There's been so many times where I've just been in a funk and just not feeling good. Sometimes with my illnesses, and it confuses the heck out of Ed, but I'll have a week where I'm just, I'm handling everything fine, and then just one day it just all hits me and I'm just inconsolable, and he's looking at me like, what just happened? And he's asked me before, he's like, what caused this to happen? Like, what happened? And I think some of us carry the chronic illness so much, and again, maybe telling myself it's going to be fine, just get through the day, and it builds up and builds up and builds up, and the slightest thing can happen and you're just like, I can't, I just need a break, and I just need to let it all out. And then you get all the tears out, and then you're, I'm good for a couple days, but um, it's just, I just wish that people who didn't have chronic illness could understand what it's like, even for a short time, you know, of just all that we go through, all that we endure, the constant pain and all of that. And really try and just, even if they can't understand, just understand that obviously we're going through a lot, and just be accepting of us. And I don't know. Do you think that
So,
that that the we as chronic illness spoonies, do you think that there can be hope and faith, and but yet still be honest? Like if you look at a social media profile, what's the balance of sharing the good, bad, and the ugly?
yeah, I think that, it's hard to say if there's necessarily a balance, so to speak, because that to me is going to be on an individual
Mm-hmm.
basis. Um, there will be times that I feel like I'm being pretty positive and I'm trying to inspire others, and then there's other times where I will vocalize my struggles as
Mm-hmm.
well. And do you feel that you are getting more support or more, yeah, I guess more support or more people standing behind you when you're sharing those positive things? And then like when you're trying to share that you're struggling about things, it's like crickets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that can be frustrating because then you're like, okay, well, I guess people only want to see the positive side of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you tend not to share the struggles, and that's where you start internalizing it, which can
Mm-hmm.
just start really eating at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had many of phone calls where I've said, this test came back bad, or um, new diagnosis, or they think it might be this, and crickets,
Mm-hmm.
just crickets. And it's like, so
Yeah.
I have begun cherry picking a little bit about who I tell the things to.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
because you always know our little sister chat one is never crickets.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. We have a sister chat with, if you all don't know, Tina and I are sisters-in-law, and so it's me, and then Tina and her other three sisters, and so yeah, we have a girl chat going. So that's a good outlet of being like, today's a rough day, and we have a nurse practitioner and a lawyer in the group, so that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I
I
think no
always
matter,
call, I refer to her as my personal nurse. I consulted with my personal nurse practitioner.
yeah, P&P.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, definitely. Well, you got to use the outlets that you have, and I think, to wrap all this up, I think I, I think number one, we need to acknowledge the struggles within ourselves, and also spend the energy with the people that will sit in the hole with you and will support you as best as they can without offering criticism or the toxic positivity that is not going to serve you really well.
Yeah. It's all about finding your tribe through
Yeah.
this.
Yep. Yep. And that can be hard to find the people that are out there, but they're out there. It could be somebody online, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. You never
Doesn't
know
have to
who
be.
you'll connect to, and just immediately feel that connection and the support of supporting each other.
Hmm. Yeah. And if you don't have anybody, you've got us. So reach out to us on Instagram. Um, hey, I'm having a rough day, whatever it may be, and we'll gladly help you and support you as best we can. So if you're not following the Instagram page, it's Spoonful of Strength. You definitely want to. And we're here for you. And we're here for all of our spoonies. Let's go ahead and have you introduce a spoonie for today.
Our spoonie this week is Melissa. She is an RN that specializes in rare autoimmune disorders. And a few years ago, she was actually diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which in turn sparked a new mission for her to help other women avoid midlife issues. For those that aren't familiar with Hashimoto's disease, it is an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid gland. In essence, it leads to the death of the thyroid's hormone producing cells, which ends up affecting a decline in your hormone production, resulting in hypothyroidism. So let's go ahead and welcome Melissa in to our podcast.
We are so glad that you took time out of your day to come talk to us. We want to start by just asking you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Melissa. I'm a registered nurse. I have been a nurse for 34 years. Um, I have specialized in all kinds of things from neuro to women's care, rare autoimmune disorders, um, a lot of quality work, training for other nurses. So I have just had a wealth of experience. I've had experience in the health insurance industry, in home health, hospital nursing, obviously. So just a broad range. But for the past close to 20 years, I have been doing primarily the autoimmune conditions.
Then eventually, a few years ago, something changed in your life that turned you from the caregiver into a patient as well. You can tell our listeners a little bit about that journey.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. I believe it was about 4 years ago. Um, I was very, very active. If you go back and look at my original Instagram post for my thyroid page, you'll see one of the first, actually, the first two posts that I put on there was my activity from my Apple Watch. Every single day I closed my rings. I was one of those people during the pandemic that walked every day. And when I mean walked, I mean like 5 or 6 miles a day. And about 4 years ago, I just got kind of really tired from doing those walks. And I thought, okay, I'm just getting burnt out on them. Well, my husband went on a trip and I just stopped walking during those 3 weeks. I just stopped walking. And I didn't really think anything about it. But when he came back home, I just found I didn't have the energy to go walking with him anymore, which is something that we did every single day for, probably 2 to 3 years at that point. I had no energy. I literally just couldn't even fathom going on a 5 or 6 mile hike through the woods to the lake, etc. And I still didn't quite put my finger on it. I knew something was not right, but I didn't know what it was. I really just thought, okay, I'm just too tired. I have too much, fatigue. I just don't want to do it anymore. Um, and I really just attributed it to I'm just a mid-aged woman and I'm tired now. But that was not it. I knew something else was wrong. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Um, I have a family history of thyroid issues. So throughout the years, I have always been tested for thyroid problems. And I knew I was borderline. I was always told you're borderline, everything looks fine. Your TSH is a little bit high, but it's still normal. Your body's compensating for that. And even as a nurse, I did not think to go and look up to see exactly what my labs were showing me, which was my mistake. When I look back, I definitely see that was my biggest mistake is not investigating it for myself, taking everyone's word for it. Oh, you're fine, you're fine. So it wasn't until I had a routine EKG, I was having a procedure done, and my surgeon insisted because I was 50 plus at that point, I had to have an EKG done. Even though I was on no prescription medications, I had no history whatsoever. He insisted that I have that done. And come to find out, when I got the results back, they were horrible. I had arrhythmia. I had bradycardia. This is just from the EKG. It literally said they suspected I had had a heart attack in the past, which I
Mm.
certainly never knew. So my surgeon said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, you cannot have this procedure done. You need to go directly to a cardiologist." So from there, I went to see a cardiologist and was eventually from the cardiologist diagnosed with the thyroid problem, because the cardiologist insisted at that point that I have all just a battery of tests, blood counts, the Doppler studies, obviously more EKGs, stress test, etc. But it was my thyroid antibodies that really confirmed what was going on, and my thyroid antibodies were skyrocket. And of course, that indicates that I have Hashimoto's, because I had low thyroid. If it had been high, I would have been a Graves' disease, for example. But because mine was low, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroiditis. So it's been a long journey. And I will say, even as a nurse, I didn't know anything about Hashimoto's, which is kind of disappointing. I even went so far as to look back through my nursing textbooks from 30 years ago when I was in nursing school, just to see what I had highlighted about the endocrine system and about thyroid problems. And it was literally like 3 or 4 sentences that were highlighted, which was kind of shocking. Because I know a lot of people, I told you guys earlier that Hashimoto's is not considered life-threatening, but I said it is a game changer, and that is completely true. When your endocrine system is out of whack, it affects every other system in your body. So I was just really surprised that there was so little emphasis on the endocrine system, even back as far as my own nursing education. And I have heard
Mhm.
that from a lot of physicians as well, that the endocrine system is very overlooked even in medical school. So when you think about women today that have hormonal issues, you can kind of trace it back to what was being taught 30 years ago. Because these
Mm.
folks that are general practitioners, endocrinologists, um, healthcare providers in general, they are um, basing their diagnosis on antiquated information from 30 years ago. I
Mm.
think that's a big
Wow.
root cause, a big root of the hormonal issues women face today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just as a side note, I mean, you guys can just take this with a grain of salt. I also went so far as to look up the average life expectancy of a female. Back in the 1950s, it was about 55 years old to 60, 55 to 60. And even in the 70s, it, had increased a little bit up to the 60s and 70s. And it of course is progressively, and this is for a white woman. A African American female would have been even lower on the life expectancy. So I can see why some of these hormonal issues, particularly postmenopausal, were not studied as much back then, because I don't think women lived as long, and these problems did not surface to the degree that they do now, because women are living into their 70s and 80s. So therefore we are actually postmenopausal for a third of our life, where that did
Mhm.
not used to be the case
Yeah.
20,
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago.
Gosh. So why do you think that a lot of women's hormone related conditions get dismissed or even misdiagnosed?
I think honestly, and I'm going to base it on what I know as a nurse and what I talk to people about from the past 20 years to my own personal experience. I think women in general, we dismiss our own healthcare problems. We,
Yeah.
just like I did, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired. Oh wow, I just need to take a nap. When that is not normal for me. I've never, ever been a nap taker. I've never had chronic fatigue until my thyroid was completely out of whack and I was depleted. And yet I still justified it to myself that I was just tired. Well, this is just part of normal aging. And when we go to the physician and we say, I'm tired, well,
Mm-hmm.
you should rest. Or have you tried exercise? Exercise will increase your endorphins. You'll feel better. Well, I was
Mm-hmm.
already an exerciser. I walked 6 miles a day. I did the elliptical. I did some strength training. I did all of those things. So why did I all of a sudden have a full on stop? I cannot do this anymore. And yet I was dismissed. Oh, that's just normal aging. I mean, I know that's a circular answer to your question. Why do I think we're dismissed? I think part of
Yeah.
it is women dismiss it themselves. And you can go with any of those symptoms of menopause. Weight gain. Well, I'm getting older. Of course, I'm going to gain a little weight, even though I'm not
Yeah.
eating anything differently. I'm not snacking more and I'm still exercising. Same with brain fog. And I don't even like the term brain fog. I used to think it was funny. Oh, brain fog. It sounds so cute. Oh, I'm having a moment. But even in pregnancy, we call it pregnancy brain fog, right? It's your hormones out of whack. And when your hormones are out of whack, it is going to cause cognitive issues. So it's not just brain fog, it's true cognitive impairment. And,
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of training, in my current role. And when 5 years ago, I would have been able to think about my next three sentences, for example. Like I didn't need a cue card. My coworkers were always like, wow, you really ad lib. You really can just go with it. And I can.
Mm-hmm.
But once this hit, it was a true cognitive impairment. Sometimes I would be in the middle of a sentence and could not think of the word that I wanted to say. And that is not normal for me. And that
Yeah.
happened very, very suddenly as well. So again, it's not a brain fog, it's cognitive impairment. But because women are told brain fog, oh, that's so funny. I can't remember where my keys are. I can't remember where my glasses are when they're on my head. We all say things like that and we all think it's normal aging, but it is actually not normal aging. And there are actually even terms for it, for that cognitive impairment. It's almost like an aphasia at times. And
Mm-hmm.
when you know the word in your head and you cannot get it out, that is aphasia. And that is what people who have had strokes have aphasia. They have memory issues like that. So I think we dismiss it as women. We are busy moms. Of course, if you're in your 40s to 50s, you likely have an aging parent and you likely also have some teens that are still in the home and you're busy. You need to get things done and you just keep going until your body gives you that full stop. And that's when we call it chronic fatigue. You cannot do anything else. It is different than being tired. I have been
Mm-hmm.
tired in my past and I still push through. I still keep going. Chronic fatigue is when you literally cannot do that anymore. And I know all of those symptoms, they're all hormonally related. And the other thing with chronic fatigue and all of these symptoms, they're also very, very um, tied in with nutrition. And that's another thing that I found myself extremely depleted was in my nutrition status. So I think that is just a whole nother perspective of how all of this compounds on itself. And it
Mm-hmm.
all starts with your hormones being out of whack.
Yeah.
For me, it did anyway. Um, and with
Yeah.
the cardiac issue, I ended up having an ablation done. I had severe PVCs, and they were more than 20%, which you're considered a great burden of PVCs when you're above 20%. Mine were well above 20%, which means basically one out of every four heartbeats was an irregular heartbeat for me. And of
Wow.
course, with PVCs, you're increasing your risk for other cardiovascular issues. You're increasing your risk for stroke, for heart attack. They basically told me also that I have a heart murmur now that has to be monitored forever. And again, those things add to your cardiovascular risk. And for someone my age, that's a huge burden. That's for the next 20 or 30 years of my life. I have to be monitored. I have to constantly be worried that this is going to occur again. The ablation did work to cure the PVC, but the damage to the heart had already been done. It's the murmur now that I have to worry about. My valves are not correct, and they constantly have to do more testing to keep sure and make sure that those are still going in the right direction. My doctor described it as a swinging door. It should be opening at the same time and closing at the same time, and mine was off. So I was opening one side and closing the other, and that can lead to backflow into your heart, which of course when you have the backflow, you're not pumping out enough blood to satisfy your body's needs for oxygen. So it's all, for me, it's all very layered and compounded, and that's what I'm talking about with Hashimoto's and thyroid issues. Women do not know that they are at risk. And I have had women tell me that, oh, I've had low thyroid for years and my doctor just diagnosed me with Hashimoto's. That is not correct. You have Hashimoto's years before you have symptoms of hypothyroid. I mean, it can be in you can have those antibodies which are literally attacking your thyroid gland for 10 years or 20 years before you ever have the symptoms of low thyroid. Once you have the symptoms of low thyroid, if your doctor is aware and you go and you say, I'm having my hair is thinning, my nails are brittle, I've had skin changes, I have no energy, I'm gaining weight, then your doctor might say, oh, wow, you're 50. I'm going to go ahead and test your thyroid. Even if they test your thyroid and find out you have low thyroid, a lot of doctors do not even test your thyroid antibodies. And the reason for that, they will say, the treatment is not going to be any different. We are still going to prescribe you low thyroid medication. But the treatment actually is different. Taking a pill to correct my thyroid is wonderful, great. I have a synthetic hormone that I am now taking to correct my thyroid hormone, but it is the lifestyle changes that go along with it that you are missing out on if you do not know that you actually have an autoimmune disorder. And when you find out you have an autoimmune disorder, for most people, that perks your ears up and you think, wow, oh my gosh, I really need to pay attention and really get my life back in order. For me, it was nutrition. I had to get my nutrition back in order. I already was an exerciser, but I needed to get my energy level back in order to, keep going with my exercise, which that took a long time, at least a year. And I'm still not there yet, but I try. Um, but it's those lifestyle changes that people overlook that can be really, really important to
Yeah.
your hormonal health. So
Yeah.
I think it's so layered. And if I could say one thing that I think is super important for any female, particularly if you have a family history of thyroid issues, your sister, your mother, your cousin, etc., go get your thyroid checked, and don't just get your thyroid level checked. You have to ask for thyroid antibody testing. And that is super, super important. I believe it is 1 in 8 women have a thyroid issue. 90% of hypothyroid, low thyroid, actually is caused by Hashimoto's. So 9 out of 10 people who have low thyroid probably already had Hashimoto's and did not know it and may still not know it. I believe they say about 60% of people probably have a thyroid issue that are unaware of it. And it is predominantly women. That is the other big, big message. I believe it is 8 to 9 times more likely to affect a female than a male. Those are shocking statistics
Oh, yeah.
for women,
Yeah.
for women's health.
Join Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, a community open to everyone. Whether you have a chronic illness or support someone who does, you are welcome at Spoonful of Strength. You'll get preview clips of the upcoming episodes and insight into my world as a spoonie. That's Spoonful of Strength, spoonful with 2 L's, on Instagram.
Circling back, you said something very early on about not really paying attention to your labs. And sure that that is shifted now. And that's one thing that have realized too. And it's something that there's times that I have iron low iron and anemia, and they'll be like, oh no, you're fine, you're fine. And then suddenly I'm dealing with anemia again, because I feel like they just look down those lines for those red numbers
Yes.
and don't necessarily track it. So
Yes.
do you have any tips or advice on the best way to kind of the importance of tracking the trends of your blood work?
That is so important and really critical, because you're right. A lot of the physicians, healthcare providers, nurses, all of us, we look at that moment in time in that lab work, and we are looking for the highs and the lows. But the trends are what's important. I mean, of course, it's important to know if you're critically high on something right then. I mean, we want to treat that. But for you personally, it is very important to track your labs. I would suggest to all people that have frequent labs drawn, or even an occasional, look at the trends. You can, if you have LabCorp, for example, or Quest, or whoever your lab provider is, they have portals. You can log into your account and you can actually look at your trends. So I can go back now and look at my early thyroid labs, and I can see what they started out and what ones were actually drawn at the very beginning when I was just, in screening, I guess you would say, before my diagnosis. And I can see gaps. I can see that they never tested my thyroid antibodies at all back in those early days. Um, same with my iron. I've also been anemic and I take iron now. I can go back and look at from the earliest stages when they just first noticed that my blood count was off. Wow, your blood count is a little off. You probably need some iron. But from there, then they really started monitoring my iron. And not only, it's not just checking your blood count, but it's looking at your iron level. It's looking at your iron stores. It's looking at your iron binding capacity. There's all kinds of things more to it than just your iron level. So when you
Mm-hmm.
start looking deeper, further down that chain, and looking at your stores of iron, I was depleted. I had no iron stores. That's how bad it had gotten. So just doing a blood count and saying, oh, you probably need some iron, that's not really enough to, I think, for most people to really pay attention. Oh, iron, I'll take that little
Mhm.
supplement. And oh, if I forget it, it's fine. Nobody really likes to take iron. I think even myself, when I was first diagnosed with anemia, even though I knew it was contributing to my fatigue, I still didn't address it properly because I was in that same boat. I was looking at just my current, blood count. But it wasn't until I saw how depleted my iron stores had gotten and how dangerous that can be that I really, really started paying attention to my own iron capacity and my own iron stores. And that really led me to be more compliant with my iron supplement. That's number one. Even nurses can be non-compliant, and I hate to say that, but it's true.
Mhm.
But number two, to really look at the types of food I was eating. Was I helping the problem or hurting the problem? And I think nutrition just, it gets so overlooked because most of us, and myself included, when I would do self-evaluations, like a health and wellness self-evaluation, I was always really, really good on the exercise part. Wow, I'm doing so great. I'm exercising 30 minutes every day and, on and on. And then when I would do my self-assessment on the nutrition side, it would say, how many servings of fruits or vegetables are you eating? How much meat are you eating? How much protein are you getting? And I would always guess it, and I'd probably fudge it a little. Wow, I'm eating 3 servings of vegetables a day. Probably I wasn't. I might have been getting 1 a day or 2 a day. So I think the nutrition part, we all think we're doing better in terms of nutrition than we are. But when you really, really get down to it and start
Mhm.
monitoring and thinking about the things that you're putting in your body that are going to restore your levels, it's just a total game changer. At least it was for me. I feel like that part for myself had always been a huge deficit, but it was because I thought I was healthy. I had no health problems. I exercised. I was thin, was not overweight. So I felt like I was a healthy person. And it wasn't until all this happened that I discovered nutritionally I was not a healthy person at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
literally at all. And that's why all of my nutrients, my vitamins and my minerals were all in the gutter. They were just in the gutter, in my opinion. So I do have to work really, really hard to compensate for that still to this day.
Mm-hmm. Um, I've always heard that doctors and nurses can be the worst patients. And my mom's a nurse, same thing, doesn't do her routine stuff that she needs to do and all of that. But you were used to working kind of behind the scenes, helping patients treat their autoimmune diseases. So, did that help you when you had to deal with an autoimmune disease yourself?
I think it did. I will say being proactive prior to my diagnosis, did it help me? Probably not,
Mm-hmm.
because I was the one giving advice and I was the one helping others. And I was not a hypocrite. I always felt like, okay, if I'm going to counsel patients about the proper exercise, I need to be doing the same. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the diet, the nutrition, I felt like I was immune to that part because I was not overweight, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my patients usually wanted help with weight reduction, losing weight. So it was more in that sense that I could talk to them about their diet. We'll make sure you are taking in less calories than you are burning every day and make sure that you're doing that for the week's time. But I wasn't really talking about nutrition. I was talking about a diet to lose weight. So for me, it wasn't until I crossed over into being a patient that I really started practicing what I preach in that sense. I do think my own advice to patients over the years has definitely helped me now that I am a patient. I think back to things that I told them. And, one of the biggest things I think helps me now, and I believe helped my patients, was starting small. Do what you can, where you can, and when you can. If you are not able to get up and walk for a mile, that's okay. Get up and walk around your house. Do some steps in your own home when you can. That is at least going to get you up and active. If you can't go, out and do a mile of walking, but you still need to get that morning sun, go sit out on your porch or on, wherever you have available to get that morning sun. That actually helps lift your mood. And it also helps, get your vitamin D, which is going to be necessary for your body. So I think the things I taught my patients, I definitely look back and actually do try to do them myself now more than I probably did before. Um, but I think my own experience as a nurse, probably like your mom, if
Mm-hmm.
it's not to the point where I need to address it, I'm probably not going to. Now, did I do my screenings, my mammograms, my pap smears? Yes, I did all of those basic types of screenings. And I reported problems to my doctor. But I think for this issue, because those symptoms are so vague, if you think about it, weight gain, oh, well, you're 50. Of course, you're going to gain weight. The cognitive issues, oh, well, your memory's probably slipping a little bit. You're in your 50s. Um, the fatigue issue, well, you're just tired. You're just getting older. Those things sound so vague when you put them separately. And so to go to a doctor, or even for myself to think, oh my gosh, I need to go to the doctor about that. Women don't think that way. We don't typically just say, oh, I'm feeling so tired. I think I need to go to the doctor about that. We put it off until you cannot put it off any longer. And that's what happened to me. I literally could not put it off any longer. Um, thank goodness that one doctor honestly insisted that I get that EKG done. Because if that had not occurred, I think probably to this day, I would still be thinking, wow, I sure am tired. I sure do take a
Mm-hmm.
lot of naps. But would I have actually gotten the care that I needed had it not been for the catastrophic event of having the heart problem? I don't know that I would have. And that's the
Yeah.
honest truth. And that's actually scary to me, which is what led me to even develop my thyroid page. That's what first got me started on Instagram with the thyroid page. Was I wanted other women who had thyroid issues or had chronic fatigue issues to realize this is a serious issue and you need to be checked. Your thyroid needs to be checked, and not just your labs, but your antibody levels. That was my first goal when I first started doing this. But once I started doing this and I started seeing all of the hormonal issues that women face that have the same basic overlapping symptoms, that's really what led me to, okay, it's bigger than just your thyroid. It's actually your endocrine system. It's actually your hormones, which kind of led me to the menopause, because I feel like I can help women with the menopause and the hormonal part. And by the way, you also need to get your thyroid tested if you're having these symptoms.
Yeah.
And that's really what drives me now. It's really helping women see your symptoms are not isolated, they are interconnected. And for most women in our age group, they are actually hormonal in nature. Your hormones control everything in your body. I used to think your nervous system and your cardiovascular system, because that's what we learned about. Oh my gosh, your heart. I mean, your heart is an organ, and it's responsible for so much. And your brain, I mean, goodness, your brain is responsible for all of your nervous system activities. But actually, if you really get down to the brass tacks of it, your hormones are what is triggering those other symptoms to do their job. So if you don't have your hormones in check, you're going to have some problems later in life, by the time you reach your 50s or your 60s.
My gosh, I
Yes,
think it's so important.
Yes, yes. Lots of wonderful, amazing, very important
Amazing.
advice given here. Tell our
thank you.
listeners how they can follow you and find you on your social media accounts.
Well, I have a page. It is Melissa, Melissa, and then an underscore, thyroid underscore RN. So Melissa underscore thyroid underscore RN. I have a page, elemental underscore nurses. And I also have a Facebook page, elemental nurses. So any one of those, you would be able to follow my content.
Hmm. And we will make sure and tag that in the description, as well as the promotions for this episode. So if
Great.
because there's so much information, and a lot of this information, I'm in my upper 40s, and also dealing with autoimmune conditions. And so there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of information that you put out that's just amazing, and very, very insightful information for our listeners. So we really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us. This is something we've not talked about before with women's health and thyroid. And I think it certainly gave our listeners some good tips and tricks and things to watch out for. Yeah,
I
yeah,
hope the information, I know mine is more thyroid related, but honestly, I feel like a lot of your listeners with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic
yeah.
issues, I do feel like some of those tidbits will apply to almost any female who is going through those vague symptoms that we don't know what to do with. Seek help.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what we should
Yeah.
all be
Mhm.
doing, is seeking help, because they're very connected. So I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners. I know your audience is, what we call spoonies. I
Hmm.
definitely understand the spoonie concept. Um, I have had my own spoonie days, that is for sure, to the point where my husband literally saw me on the couch every single day because I was taking a certain heart medication that was adding to all of the problems, to the point where he said, "Are you okay? Are you depressed?" Um, and I wasn't depressed, but I certainly felt like a person who would be depressed feels. I definitely feel that. And don't let your doctor just prescribe you an anti-anxiety medication when you feel like
Yeah.
something's not right. That's what happened to me. Yeah, oh wow. But
Mhm.
before I was ever diagnosed, I knew something wasn't right. I knew I didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Oh, you need an anti-anxiety medication. And that's what I was prescribed, which did help with
Yeah.
that. I will say it did help with that, but I'm off of that now. I weaned myself off with my cardiologist assistance. I didn't just wean myself, quote. I did do that under the direction of my cardiologist. She said, this medication could actually be contributing some to your cardiac issues. So if you can, I would like for you to wean off of that medicine, and you can talk to your doctor about prescribing something else. But once I got off of that, I did not ask for any other medication
Yeah.
for anything like anxiety or depression. But
Yeah.
it's been a long, long process to even get back to probably half of what I was doing. But I keep adding to it. Like I said, start small,
Yeah.
add in little bits. You can't change your whole diet overnight. You will not be
Mm-mm.
able to do it. If I gave you a list
Yeah.
of foods to eat and not eat right now, you would not be able to implement all of that. So find what you do like and implement it. Once that becomes a habit, tackle something else.
Yeah.
Little, I call it baby steps. Myself,
Yeah.
they're my baby steps. So I
Yeah.
hope this is helpful to your listeners in
Oh
some
my
way.
gosh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and I hope
Yeah.
they follow me. I do a lot of informational videos on my page. Sometimes I'm talking about iron. How do you get iron in your diet? Sometimes I'm talking something specific to thyroid. Different symptoms associated with menopause, different symptoms associated with your thyroid, how to manage chronic fatigue, how to manage, hair loss. That's another big one for women, especially with thyroid problems in menopause. So there's a lot of different information on my page, and I will say some of them are funny. Some of them are kind of funny
Hmm.
memes, like, oh, it's so funny, and I am poking fun at it a little bit with menopause, but it's simply to bring awareness and make it not a taboo subject. It should be
Yeah.
talked about because, like I said earlier, women are living, if you live a full life, 80s, you're living 30 years postmenopausal.
Yeah.
That's a third of your life. It should be talked about.
Yeah.
It's not a hidden
Hmm.
secret. We all go through it. Every female will go through menopause if they're lucky
Yeah.
enough to get to that age, right? So it should be
Right.
talked about. And there are so many
Mm-hmm.
long-term consequences if you don't take those proactive measures and get your nutrition in check, get your exercise in check. Those are important things. I feel like I'm going
Hmm.
back to the basics of what my grandmother taught me, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. So
Diet and
much good.
Yeah.
nutrition.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Diet,
much good
nutrition.
information. Yep.
Yeah.
We could sum it
Yes.
up in just that. And,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
well, thanks again so much. And we really appreciate you taking your time out today.
Yes.
And we look forward to following your page as well and getting some good tips and tricks.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. It's been
Oh,
it's
you're
been
Yes.
fun.
welcome.
Oh my goodness, she was just full of such amazing advice. Things that as women, especially, we tend to overlook or
Yeah.
discount, or I don't have time to take care of this because I got to keep the household running, or I got to do blah blah blah. So
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many things that when you're talking about, just the weight gain and the fatigue and all of that, that would be considered normal for a middle-aged woman, to realize there could be something behind it. And she mentioned something about like looking up your lab work. I guess mine is called My Chart. But you can
mhm.
actually view the trends of all your blood work. So I can look at my blood work and look at um, my TSH, and then I can click and actually see the trends of every other
Detriment.
blood work that I've had done. So that's a little tip if you all have that in your medical charts. But yeah, so much good information. Gosh, I think this could have been like a 2-hour episode just with all. I had
Yeah,
so many more questions. Unfortunately, time
I did.
beat
Yeah,
us.
I did too. I had more questions to to ask her. So we may have to invite her again
Yeah. Yeah.
down the road, because
Yeah.
I think, you know, that the women's health and as especially as we get older, you know, just discounting things, you know, not just ourselves, but our medical practitioners discounting it to our aging process.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, gosh, the first one's in the books, and I don't think we could have
Yeah.
started out any stronger.
No, I don't think so either. What a great start of season 4. Thank you all for joining in on our first episode of season 4. So season 4 is going to be a little bit different. We are going to save some of our spoons to enjoy the summer, and so we're only going to release episodes every few weeks. So be sure to keep an eye on our pages, Instagram and Facebook, and we will announce when the next episode will drop. And that is Spoonful of Strength, spoonful with 2 L's of strength. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Until then, have a wonderful summer.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Spoonful of Strength. We hope that you found a little inspiration and maybe even a new perspective to carry with you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that like button, follow us for more, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And if you're feeling generous, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your support helps us reach more spoonies just like you.
Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and keep finding strength in your story. Bye for now.
And see you next time on Spoonful of Strength.